Just one man and 20 horses standing against half a mile of enemies. Through the swirling dust, the enemy general's feathers shine so bright you can't miss them. The gamble is simple. Kill him and their army breaks, but miss him and everyone dies. Cortés looks at his captains, men who are wounded, exhausted, and half dead. Yet he smiles. We charge. This was the moment 100,000 warriors learned that even empires can bleed. It is midnight, June 30th, 1520. The causeway is barely 3 feet wide, flanked on both sides by water that is black, deep, and cold enough to stop a man's heart. Cortés pushes forward, leading the shattered remains of his army. They were some 300 strong when they entered Tenochtitlan, but now he doesn't even want to know the number. They are weighed down by gold, stupid, heavy gold. It is essentially death in their pockets, yet they refuse to leave it behind. They came for treasure, and now they are dying for it. There is a dark poetry in that. As the rain falls and thunder rolls, the drums begin. These war drums don't sound like mere instruments. They sound like your own heart trying to escape your chest, or the earth itself splitting open. It is the sound of a god laughing, psychological warfare perfected by the Aztecs long before the term existed. The Spanish freeze just for a heartbeat, but that is all it takes. Suddenly arrows don't just fall, they erupt, turning the sky black. They don't whistle through the air, they hiss like 10,000 snakes. Steel helmets ring out like bells as armour takes the hits for the lucky ones. But for the others, the arrows find the gaps, the neck, the armpit, behind the knee, places where metal offers no protection. The screaming starts, and it never stops. Hundreds of Aztec war canoes surge from the darkness like sharks, silent until the moment they strike. Warriors leap onto the causeway, not in a wild charge, but with the discipline of elite soldiers who have spent a lifetime preparing for this. Obsidian-edged clubs crash against Spanish steel, creating a brutal rhythm of cracks, rings, and thuds as the causeway transforms into a meat grinder. There is no retreat and no advance, there is only fighting and dying. Men slip on the blood-slick stones and fall into the water, where the heavy armour that once saved them from arrows now drags them down. Sinking and clawing, they are pulled into their graves by the stolen gold in their pockets, acting as anchors. The lake doesn't care about conquest, it simply takes. Cortés fights at the very front, but his horse, the beast that carried him into Tenochtitlan, stumbles. An arrow strikes its flank, then another in the neck. The animal screams, a sound almost human, before crashing down. Cortés rolls clear, lands hard, and forces himself up. He keeps moving. Always forward, never back. It is the only rule that matters now. Behind him, the column disintegrates. Officers shout orders that vanish in the noise, while soldiers abandon the wounded, drop their weapons, and try to run. But there is nowhere to run. The bridges are destroyed. Gaps in the causeway swallow entire companies until the bodies pile high enough to make new bridges. Bridges made of corpses. Men walk on their own friends to survive. Welcome to La Noche Triste. It takes 4 hours to cross the causeway. 4 hours of continuous combat with no breaks, no mercy, and no hope. It is just survival, the kind that empties a man, turning him into something else, something that only used to be human. When dawn finally comes, it is grey and weak. Cortés reaches the shore and collapses. Later, he would count the dents in his armour. 17 distinct places where he should have died, but didn't. Was he lucky or cursed? It is hard to say. He forces himself to stand and looks back to count the cost. 300 men became 500, maybe even less. It is hard to tell because they are covered in so much blood that you cannot distinguish Spanish from Tlaxcalan, or the living from the dying. Everyone is wounded. Everyone. No exceptions. There is an old, thick tree. Cortés walks to it, sits and leans his weight against the rough bark. His captains gather around him. Pedro de Alvarado with his face cut open, Gonzalo de Sandoval, his arm hanging wrong, Cristobal de Olid with an arrow still lodged in his shoulder, and Juan de Salamanca, who can barely stand. They look to their commander, waiting for orders, for inspiration, for something. Instead, Cortés buries his face in his hands and cries. These grown men, hardened conquistadors, watch their general weep. Some turn away, some cry with him, while others just stare, completely empty. Historians call this moment La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows, but that name feels too clean, too poetic. In reality, It was the night of screaming, the night of drowning, the night everything died. But not everyone, not yet. The Aztecs do not follow, at least not immediately. Instead, thousands of them watch from the causeway as victory chants echo across the water. They are celebrating, and why wouldn't they? They have just destroyed the invaders, broken the Spanish spirit, and sent them running like dogs, but in that moment they made a mistake. They let the survivors reach the shore. Cortés stops weeping. When he looks up, his eyes are different, colder. He stands. "We march!" Alvarado stares at him in disbelief. "Where? They'll hunt us down." Cortés smiles, not out of happiness, but something darker. "Tlaxcala," he says. "We march to Tlaxcala. And when we get there, we rebuild. And when we rebuild, we come back." Sandoval lets out a bitter laugh. "Come back? We barely escaped." "Exactly," Cortés replies. "Barely. Not impossible, just barely." That is the difference between defeat and disaster, between being broken and being bent. Barely. From July 1st to the 6th, the survivors endure 6 days of absolute hell as they march north. Every step is agony. Wounds turn black as infection spreads. Men drop, unable to rise, and are simply left behind. The 2,000 Tlaxcalans who stayed try to carry the worst cases, but there are never enough hands. So the dying are left propped against trees, given a sip of water or a quick prayer if there is time, then abandoned. The column cannot stop because the Aztecs are coming. You can feel them watching from the hills, patient, hunting. Every village the Spanish pass is empty or burned, the wells poisoned, the food gone. The Aztec Empire is thorough. They want the invaders to starve and weaken, and it is working. Men begin to hallucinate, seeing water, food, or home where there is none. Some wander off into the forest following these visions, never to be seen again, while others just sit down and refuse to move. The column marches past them. What else can it do? This isn't an army anymore. It is a funeral procession of moving corpses. Not dead yet, but soon. Everyone knows it, except Cortés. He keeps talking about Tlaxcala, about rebuilding and returning. His captains think he's insane. That shock, fever, or grief must have broken something in his mind. But he keeps walking, so they keep walking. What choice do they have? By the evening of July 6, they reach the mountains. Beyond to them lies Tlaxcala, promising safety and hope, but between here and there stretches a wide, flat valley, perfect for slaughter. Cortés stands at the ridge and looks down. The valley floor is black, not with dirt, but with bodies, warriors. Whether it is 20,000 or 100,000 doesn't matter. They fill the valley like a living ocean, washing over the survivors with the sound of pounding drums. Alvarado appears beside Cortés, staring into the abyss, before finally whispering, "We're dead." Cortés nods. "Probably." "Definitely," Alvarado corrects him. "Maybe," Cortés insists. "How?" Cortés points far across the valley to a hill where a figure stands in bright feathers and a huge headdress, holding a sacred banner. "We kill him." Alvarado laughs, a genuine, disbelief-filled laugh. "That's your plan? Kill their general through 40,000 warriors?" 20,000, Cortés corrects. "Does it matter?" "Not really." They stand in silence, watching what might be their last sunset, both thinking it, but neither saying it. At dawn on July 7th, 1520, the Spanish descend into the valley. 500 men are simply walking, not charging, not running, but moving in tight formation as if they were on parade, acting as though they aren't moments away from death. Psychological warfare works both ways. The Aztec warriors watch them come in confusion. These men should be running, begging, or terrified. Instead, they march, organized, defiant, with steel glinting and flags flying. Is this madness, courage? Or perhaps they are the same thing. The Spanish form a defensive square, infantry in the center, pikes bristling on the outside, and 20 horsemen scattered, ready to strike. Cortés rides at the front. His armor is a disaster, dented, cracked, and blood-stained. But it is still steel, and it is still intimidating. He raises his hand and the column moves forward, straight into the trap. Silence is the worst part. There are no war cries, no drums, just 20,000 warriors watching 500 men march to their death. The only sounds are Spanish boots on dirt, the creak of leather, the clinking of armour, and the heavy sound of breathing. Then the silence breaks. A roar erupts, not just from throats, but from souls. It is a sound that makes the ground shake, makes your organs vibrate, and makes your brain scream to run. The Aztec army begins to move. They aren't attacking yet. They are surrounding, flowing like water around a rock until every direction is closed off. The Spanish cannot afford to panic. They tighten the square, lock their shields, and lower their pikes. Every man is terrified, but nobody runs because there is nowhere left to run to. From a hill, the Aztec commander watches. Matlatzincatzin, high priest of Tenochtitlan. His armour is covered in thousands of shimmering feathers, topped by a headdress visible from a mile away, a symbol of command, authority, and divine right. When he raises his hand, signal-bearers mirror the gesture, and the drummers change their rhythm. The entire army responds instantly, not like a mob, but like a machine. The Spanish are about to face the finest army in Mesoamerica, a force that has never lost, until perhaps today. The first wave hits from three sides, not all at once, but in a calculated surge. The warriors carry clubs edged with obsidian, sharper than Spanish steel and capable of cutting deeper. But the stone is brittle, one hard hit against metal and it shatters. The warriors know this, so they fight accordingly. They don't swing wildly, they are surgical, aiming for the gaps in the armour, the neck, the face, the hands. The Spanish infantry braces and takes the impact. When steel swords meet obsidian clubs, the sound is unique. Not the ringing of metal on metal, but a sharper crack, like breaking glass or snapping bones. Men on both sides fall and the Spanish square contracts, tightening to hold the line, but only barely. Then come the arrows, always the arrows. They arrive in timed waves. With every volley, the Spanish raise their shields. Some arrows bounce off, but others find flesh. Men cry out and fall, only to be stepped over as comrades fill the gaps. With every volley, the square shrinks, getting tighter and more compressed like a coiled spring. The pressure builds until something has to break, whether it be Spanish discipline or Aztec patience. Both armies know it, waiting for the crack, the collapse, the end. It is coming, just not yet. The Aztecs pull back, not to retreat, but to regroup. This is their proven strategy: attack, withdraw, and attack again to wear the enemy down. Their goal isn't just to kill on the battlefield, it is to capture. They want to drag these invaders to Tenochtitlan in chains, cut out their hearts on the pyramid steps, and feed them to the gods. The Spanish know this, and it adds a layer of horror to the fighting. They aren't just fighting against death, they are fighting something far worse. Capture means torture, sacrifice, and becoming entertainment for an empire. So they fight harder, no prisoners, no surrender. It is just survival or death with nothing in between. An hour passes, and the Spanish have moved only 50 yards. 50 yards of continuous combat. The formation is smaller now, tighter, with men missing, dead or dying. Every single soldier is bleeding, no exceptions. Their armour is dented, weapons damaged, and shields shattered. They are falling apart slowly, methodically, and mathematically. The Aztecs can calculate it. At this rate, the Spanish will last 3, maybe 4 more hours. Then they will break and the empire will win. It is simple, cold, certain mathematics. Except for one thing, one variable the Aztecs didn't account for, a possibility they couldn't predict: desperation. Cortés watches his army die, not from one massive blow, but from 1,000 cuts. He has seen battles before, winning most and losing some, but he has never seen anything like this. It is slow, methodical, and terrifyingly perfect. The Aztecs aren't making mistakes. They are flawlessly executing a plan, and it is working. He needs a miracle, a mistake, anything. Desperate, he scans the battlefield until he sees it. The hill. There, amidst the feathers and the banner, stands Matlatzincatzin, directing everything. He is the brain, the heart, and the soul of this army. The thought strikes Cortés: kill him, but logic screams no. It's impossible. Too far, too many enemies. It would be absolute suicide, but then they are dying here anyway. What is the difference between dying slowly in the mud or dying quickly in a charge? Either way, they are dead, unless, what if they break through? Cortes calls his captains in the middle of the battle and they look at him as if he's insane. Alvarado arrives with blood masking his face, asking, "What?" Cortes points to the distance. "We're going there, that hill, that general, we kill him." Sandoval stares in disbelief. "Through 20,000 men?" "Yes." "With what?" "Cavalry." "We have 20 horses," Sandoval argues. "I know. 20 against 20,000. "Yes." Sandoval looks at Alvarado, then back at Cortes. "You're serious?" "Completely. We'll die." "Probably," Cortes admits. "Maybe even definitely. But we're dying anyway. At least this way we try." Silence falls. The captains look at the hill, then at their dying army, and finally back at Cortes, whose eyes are bright, perhaps with fever, perhaps with inspiration. Alvarado grins, blood staining his teeth. "All right, why not? I've done stupider things." "Like what?" "I can't think of any, but probably." They laugh. It is inappropriate, but they laugh anyway, because what else is left? The plan is insane. The infantry will hold in a tight defensive square to buy time, while the cavalry, just 20 horses, charges straight at Matlatz and Kaizen. They must cut through the entire Aztec army, half a mile of enemies aiming for the hill, the feathers, and the banner. The goal, kill the general, take the symbol, and break their will. It is simple and suicidal and perfect. The infantry forms up, pikes extended and shields locked. Every man knows this is it, the last stand. They don't say it because they don't need to. You can see it in their eyes in the exchange of silent goodbyes and final prayers. Some men kiss their swords, others make the sign of the cross, while some just stare ahead, empty, beyond fear, beyond hope, beyond everything. When the Aztecs attack, it is a massive wave. The Spanish wall shudders, but it holds barely. Pikes thrust and swords slash, blood flows and men fall. The wall contracts and shrinks, yet it does not break. Not yet. Cortes watches and waits. Timing is everything. Go too soon, and the infantry collapses. Go too late, and everyone dies. He needs the perfect moment, the exact second when desperation meets opportunity, and then he feels it. Now, the 20 horsemen gather. Every one of them is wounded, some barely conscious, staying in their saddles through will alone. Their horses are worse, arrows in flanks, cuts on legs, exhausted and dying. But they will do one last thing, one final charge, because that is what war horses do. They run until they can't, and then they fall. Cortes draws his sword, the steel catching the sunlight and blazing for a second like a signal. His captain, Alvarado, Sandoval, Olid, Salamanca, Davila, the best killers in the Spanish army, ready their lances. Cortes looks at them. "We go through, not around, through. We don't stop, we don't slow, we kill everything between us and that banner. Understood?" They nod. What else is there to say? Cortes points his sword at the hill, at the bright feathers in the impossible distance. "Santiago!" The battle cry of Spain. The call to St. James, the last prayer. They charge. 20 horses create thunder, shaking the ground with pounding hooves and rattling armour. The sound builds into a massive, overwhelming wall of noise crashing forward. The Aztec warriors in front freeze. They have fought horses before, but never like this. Never 20 at once. At full gallop, fueled by this much hate. They break. First line scatters, warriors diving left and right, anywhere but forward. The cavalry hits the gap and explodes through. Lances punch through cotton armour, bodies and bone. Men fly and blood sprays in arcs. The horsemen don't stop or slow. They are like missiles, launched unstoppable and aimed at one target, that hill, those feathers, that banner. The second line holds. These warriors plant their feet, raise shields and lock formation, professional, trained and ready. The cavalry hits them like lightning. Horses crash through, lances shatter, and swords flash. Suddenly everything is screaming, Spanish and Aztec, human and animal, chaos and death everywhere. A horse goes down, its legs cut from under it. It crashes and rolls, crushing its rider as Aztec warriors swarm with rising clubs. Another horse falls, then another. The charge is bleeding, losing speed and men, but it is still moving, always forward. 20 horses become 15, then 10, then 8. But those 8 keep going, through hell, through death, through everything. Matlatzin sees them coming, and for the first time his expression shifts, from surprise to concern and finally to fear. He raises the sacred banner higher and signals his elite eagle and jaguar warriors to form a wall around him. These are the finest soldiers in the empire, men with cold eyes and obsidian blades who have never lost or retreated. They look professional and calculating, fully expecting to kill these horsemen and add their bodies to the thousands already dead today. They think it is just another day with more invaders to kill, but they are wrong. In the last 10 yards, Cortés spurs his dying horse. The animal has an arrow in its neck and blood flowing, yet it runs one last time for its rider, for glory, death, or both. Cortés brings his sword down, shattering an eagle warrior's shield and dropping the man without looking back. He keeps moving forward. Sandoval drives his lance through a jaguar warrior, leaving the weapon stuck in the falling body as he draws his sword to keep killing. Alvarado slashes left and right, painting himself red, while Erlid smashes through, trampling everything in his path. They break through the first line, then the second, until they face the third, the last barrier between them and the general. 5 yards become 3, then 1. Suddenly, everything seems to slow down. Cortés looks into Malatzin's eyes and sees they are wide, human, and terrified. The high priest raises the sacred banner like a shield or a prayer, but it doesn't matter. Cortés drives forward, his broken lance striking the high priest in the chest, punching through quilted armor, feathers, and flesh. Matlatzin staggers and falls, dead before he hits the ground. Juan de Salamanca lunges from his horse, grabs the falling staff, and rips it free. He holds it high, the pamitl, the sacred banner of the Aztec Empire, now in Spanish hands. It is impossible, unthinkable, yet real. The signal-bearers stare, the drums stop, and silence falls over the entire army. For 3 heartbeats, there is absolute unstillness. No fighting, no screaming, just 20,000 warriors watching their general die and their gods fall silent. Then the spell breaks, not with panic, but with understanding. In Aztec tradition, when the general falls and the sacred banner is taken, the battle is decided. The gods have spoken, and fighting further would be an insult to divine judgment. Retreat isn't cowardice. It is obedience. The first warrior turns and walks away, then another, then thousands. The army dissolves, orderly and dignified, because to them the battle ended the moment the banner fell. It is over. Against every odd calculation and reality itself, the Spanish have won. Cortés sits on his wrecked, dying horse, dripping with blood, watching the valley empty as 20,000 men depart peacefully. His captains gather around him, indistinguishable under layers of blood. Alvarado laughs and cries at the same time, Sandoval shakes in silence, and Olid vomits from the adrenaline crash. Salamanca holds the banner, staring at it in disbelief. Nobody speaks, because what is there to say? They have just done the impossible, broken an empire with 20 horses and one desperate plan. Mathematics said they should die, logic said it was impossible, but they did it anyway. Sometimes the crazy plan actually works. The Spanish infantry breaks formation and rushes forward to join the cavalry. To their shock, they find them crying, all of them. These hardened soldiers, killers and conquerors are weeping like children by theirs. They know they should be dead. Every single one of them should have been left in that valley, fed to the gods, and forgotten. But they aren't. They are alive, standing and breathing. When they count the casualties, they find only 60 Spanish dead against an army of 20,000. The math doesn't work, it can't work. Yet somehow it did. The Tlaxcalan allies emerge, their numbers reduced from 2,000 to 100. Acceptable losses. As they stare at Cortés and the captured banner, something changes in their eyes. A mix of respect, fear, and worship. This man just broke an empire with a single cavalry charge. Is he human? A god? A demon? It doesn't matter. He wins. That is all that truly matters. He keeps winning. Against everything. On July 8, 1520, the survivors begin their slow march, carrying the wounded and supporting one another. They are wrecked and broken, yet they keep moving toward Tlaxcala, toward safety, toward tomorrow. Behind them, the valley lies silent and empty save for the bodies. Aztec, Spanish and Tlaxcalan lie mixed together, indistinguishable in the dust. because in death, everyone looks the same. As the hot, merciless sun rises, men share their last drops of water and help each other walk. They don't speak much, they are still processing the impossible. How are they alive? Why didn't the Aztecs finish them? These are questions without answers, but for now, just being alive and moving is enough. Finally, Tlaxcala appears on the horizon. The city gates fly open, and people pour out, cheering, waving, and running to meet them. The news had arrived long before the army did, carried by runners, merchants, and witnesses. The story spread and grew until by the time the Spanish arrived, the legend was already born. Cortés the Unstoppable, the Godslayer, the man who cannot die. Once inside the safety of Tlaxcala, the survivors finally collapse. With the adrenaline gone, there is only pain, wounds, exhaustion, and trauma. Healers work through the night, setting bones and cleaning infections. Some men will recover, while others won't. Some will heal physically, but never mentally. That is the true cost of war and survival. On the third day, Cortés collapses as his body finally shuts down and fever takes him. For a week he lies unconscious while his captains gather to whisper in fear. Is he dying now in a bed? After surviving La Noche Triste and the impossible odds of Otumba, it seems wrong, unfair. But on the 8th day he opens his eyes and asks for 3 things: food, water and maps. His captains exhale in relief but also in fear, because if Cortés is thinking about maps, he is planning something, and Cortés's plans always mean war. The Tlaxcalan leaders arrive bearing gifts of gold, food, women, and, most importantly, warriors. They offer a full alliance, a partnership born from one simple fact. They saw what Cortés did. For generations the Aztecs seemed invincible, and their subjects had only 2 choices: pay tribute or die. There was no third option until Otumba. Until 500 men broke through 20,000, killing a general and capturing a sacred banner, making the impossible real. Now, there is a third option: rebellion. The Tlaxcalans, who have hated their oppressors for years of forced tribute and sacrifice, now offer 10,000 warriors to fight beside the man who killed a god. Across Mexico, the news spreads. While details differ, the core truth remains. The Chihuahuatl is dead, the banner is taken, and the Aztec army withdrew in defeat. The psychological impact is massive. An empire that ruled through the certainty of fear has been exposed. Otumba proved they could bleed, and now rulers in tributary cities begin to calculate: if the Aztecs can lose, should we fight? The empire feels the shift. The foundation is trembling. In Tenochtitlan, Emperor Cuitlahuac sits in silence as his advisors argue around him, some demanding they crush the Spanish immediately, others counselling patience for the rainy season. But the emperor listens and says nothing because he knows something they don't. He feels it in his bones. The war has changed. It is not about tactics or armies anymore. It is about belief. The certainty of Aztec invincibility cracked at Otumba. And for an empire built on fear, it is only a matter of time before the whole structure falls. By August 1520, Cortés begins to recover. As his wounds heal and scars form, he finds he can ride, fight, and lead once again. But more importantly, his army has grown. The survivors of Otumba, 440 Spanish and 1,500 Tlaxcalans, have transformed. Now, he commands 15,000 Tlaxcalans, with more arriving daily. Cities that once sent tribute to Tenochtitlan now send warriors to Cortés. The mathematics have reversed. What began as 500 desperate survivors has become an army of tens of thousands, all because of one charge, one banner, and one impossible moment. Cortés understands the power of this narrative. He uses it, telling the story and embellishing it, making it bigger, grander, more impossible. The legend grows, and with it his army, because people follow legends. They join impossible causes and believe in miracles, especially after they have seen one with their own eyes. Then in September, ships arrive on the coast. They bring neither Spanish reinforcements nor royal authority, but something far worse: smallpox. The disease spreads inland, moving village by village, city by city. The natives have no immunity, no defense, and no cure. They die by the thousands, then tens of thousands, until bodies pile up faster than they can be burned, and the smell of death hangs permanently over Mexico. In Tenochtitlan, Emperor Cuitlahuac falls ill with fever and pain, dying in October. The empire crowns a new emperor, Cuauhtémoc, young, brave and determined, but he inherits an empire that is already dying. It is falling not to Spanish steel but to Spanish disease, the invisible army that kills faster than any cavalry charge. Cortés did not plan this, nor did he cause it deliberately, but he uses it because war is about advantage, and smallpox is the ultimate advantage. In November, Cortés begins building brigantines, shallow draft warships designed to operate on Lake Texcoco. Far from Aztec eyes, high in the mountains, his men cut timber, forge nails and build frames, working through the winter to assemble and test them. The plan is simple: control the lake, cut off Tenochtitlan's supply lines, and starve the city. It will be siege warfare, slow, methodical and certain. The Aztecs watch and prepare their defences, strengthening causeways and stockpiling food. But something is missing: the certainty. They remember Otumba, the fall of the Xicoacoatl and the capture of the banner. Once you remember defeat, it is hard to believe in invincibility. Fear, doubt, and questions creep in, and empires built on certainty cannot survive doubt. By December, Cortés's army assembles. The Spanish force has grown to 900, bolstered by reinforcements from Cuba and Santo Domingo, men who heard the legend of Otumba and came seeking gold, glory, and a place in history. They do not yet understand the horror of La Noche Triste or the nightmare of drowning in armour, but they will. Beside them stand 80,000 Tlaxcalans, joined by warriors from Texcoco, Chalco, and a dozen other cities. These are former tributaries turned rebels, united by one thing. They saw the empire bleed at Otumba, and now they want to finish it. Cortés cannot command them all, but he is the symbol, the legend who killed a god. So they follow him. Where he goes, they go to destroy Tenochtitlan, to end the empire, and to finally be free. In April 1521, the brigantines launch, 13 ships with sails raised and cannons ready. They seize control of Lake Texcoco, cutting the causeways and choking off supplies. And so the siege begins. It is not dramatic or quick, but a grinding reality that drags on, day after day, week after week, month after month. As the city starves and disease spreads, warriors die defending positions that lead nowhere. The Aztecs fight brilliantly and desperately, but they are fighting mathematics now: time, resources, and disease, invisible enemies that cannot be defeated with mere bravery. Behind the Spanish lines, the indigenous armies swell to over 100,000 strong. Tlaxcalans, Texcocans, and Cholulans, warriors from every city that ever paid tribute, sent victims for sacrifice, or bent the knee, now stand ready to take their revenge. The empire collapses not merely from Spanish conquest, but from internal rebellion, the rising of subject peoples. It is the sound of the foundation cracking and everything above it falling. Otumba started this collapse. The siege simply finishes it. By May 1521, the siege grinds on, BC, and Tenochtitlan is dying slowly, block by block, house by house. The defenders retreat, regroup, and fight again. Cuauhtémoc leads with brilliant courage, appearing everywhere, on every barricade, canal, and rooftop. His warriors love him and die for him, but it is not enough. It is never enough simply because the mathematics are wrong. They are outnumbered, outsupplied, and running out of time. The city fills with bodies, and with no wood left to burn them, they pile up in the streets, canals, and temples. Disease spreads faster than fire: smallpox, typhus, dysentery. The Spanish call it divine judgment, while the Aztecs call it abandonment by the gods. In reality, it is neither. It is just biology, Europeans carrying diseases the natives cannot resist. It is unintentional genocide, yet the most effective kind. In June, the Spanish push forward block by block, using indigenous armies as shock troops. While Spanish casualties remain light, perhaps 50 or 100, the indigenous allies lose thousands. They are treated as expendable and everyone knows it. Cortés, the allies, everyone. Yet they fight anyway, because this is their moment of revenge for decades of tribute, sacrifice and humiliation. Now, they take it back in blood, participating in the slow destruction of the empire that enslaved them. The irony is thick. The Spanish are conquering the empire using its own subjects. Tenochtitlan falls not to foreigners, but to the people it ruled, oppressed, and exploited. They are the weapon, the Spanish simply aim it. By July, Tenochtitlan is rubble. Beautiful temples are demolished, grand palaces burned, and causeways destroyed. The Venice of the New World turned to ruins. The defenders are starving, reduced to eating leather, bark, or anything they can find. Disease is everywhere and the smell of death is permanent. Yet they do not surrender. They cannot, because Cuauhtémoc will not allow it. He declares they will fight until the end, until the last warrior falls, until the gods return, or until the world ends. His warriors obey. What else can they do? This is their home, their city, their empire. They watched it rise, and now they watch it die, slowly and painfully. But they are still standing, still fighting, and still refusing to yield. Because sometimes surrender is worse than death. Sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because you cannot bear to lose. On August 13th, 1521, Cuauhtémoc surrenders, not because he wants to, but because there is nothing left. The city is gone, the warriors are dead, the people are starving, and the gods are silent. He walks out of the ruins with his head held high, dignity intact. Cortes receives him respectfully, as one warrior to another. They understand each other. Both are killers, both are survivors, and both did what they had to do. And so the Aztec Empire ends, not with a great battle or divine intervention, but with a whimper, starvation, disease, and a slow, grinding siege. History remembers this day as the fall of Tenochtitlan, the end of an empire, and the birth of New Spain. But the real ending came over a year earlier, on July 7th, 1520, in a valley called Otumba. It happened when 500 men charged through an army, when a general fell, when a banner was taken, and when the empire learned it could bleed. That was the moment, the crack, the beginning of the end. Everything that followed was just the structure falling, the corpse finally collapsing as the mathematics caught up. Years later, historians still debate Otumba. Was it really that important? Did one cavalry charge truly change everything, or is it merely Spanish propaganda? Exaggeration where legend replaces reality. The numbers don't seem to add up. 500 against 20,000. One charge, one banner, and an army withdraws. It feels too clean, too simple, too impossible. Yet the Aztec sources confirm it. Multiple accounts from different perspectives all say the same thing. Matlatzin died, the banner fell, and the army withdrew. The impact was real, whether through tactical brilliance, psychological warfare, divine intervention, or pure luck. It happened. The Spanish survived to reach Tlaxcala, rebuild, return, and win. The empire never recovered, not from the battle itself, but from the shattered belief. Their certainty was destroyed, their invincibility proven false. That psychological wound never healed. It infected everything that came after, making resistance seem possible and causing rebellion to spread. It made the empire vulnerable, and empires built on fear cannot survive vulnerability. Cortés lived another 26 years before dying in Spain, forgotten, bitter, and broke. The gold he fought for was gone, spent and wasted. The glory had faded, questioned and complicated by time. He spent his final years writing letters, demanding recognition, payment and respect, but nobody listened. The king ignored him, the court mocked him. The man who conquered an empire died alone, poor and angry, wondering if it was all worth it. Was it? Ask the Spanish and they speak of empire, gold, power and glory. Ask the indigenous peoples and they speak of conquest, disease, death and slavery. Ask the historians and they find only complexity, questions and no easy answers. But ask Cortés. In the end he got nothing but scars, nightmares and regrets. Yet he did have one thing, one moment, one impossible charge, one cavalry strike through an army, one banner taken and one empire cracked. That moment, Otumba, lives forever in military history and in legend, immortalized in the question, how did 500 men defeat 20,000? How did it work? How was it even possible? The answer is complicated. While technology certainly helped, steel beats obsidian, armor stops arrows, and horses provide shock, it doesn't explain everything. The Aztecs had seen and killed horses before. They weren't naive or unprepared. They were organized, professional, and excellent warriors who, by every military calculation, should have crushed the Spanish and ended the invasion right there. So why didn't they? The answer lies in psychology, belief, and symbols. The things that often matter more than steel. The Aztec military was built around tradition, sacred banners, and divine generals. When the Cihuacoatl died and the banner fell, it meant something specific. The gods had spoken and the battle was over. To continue would be blasphemy, so they withdrew, orderly, dignified, and accepting of divine judgment. The Spanish exploited this, whether deliberately or accidentally. They identified the enemy's centre of gravity, the psychological linchpin, and struck it perfectly. Modern militaries still study Otumba today, not for obsolete cavalry tactics, but for these timeless principles: identify vulnerabilities, strike decisively, and exploit cultural beliefs. The technology changes, but the fundamentals do not. Small forces can defeat large armies not through superior numbers, but through superior strategy, by finding the one thing the enemy cannot afford to lose and taking it. For the Aztecs, that was their sacred banner, their divine general, and their belief in invincibility. Cortes took all three in a single charge. In just 20 minutes, the empire crumbled, not because they lost soldiers, but because they lost faith. And armies without faith do not win. Empires without certainty do not survive. So what is the lesson? Spanish historians see divine providence, indigenous historians see the tragedy of genocide, and military historians see tactical brilliance, and skeptics see sheer luck. Perhaps everyone is right, and everyone is wrong because history is complicated, messy, and full of contradictions. But one thing is certain. On July 7th, 1520, in a valley in central Mexico, something extraordinary happened. 500 wounded men charged through an army, killed a general, took a banner, and survived. Whether through genius, luck, divine will, or pure desperation, it happened. The witnesses saw it, the sources record it, and the consequences prove it. 500 men, 20 horses, one impossible charge, one empire shattered. That is history, real, brutal, impossible, and true. Stand in the valley of Otumba today. Close your eyes and listen. Can you hear them? The hooves, the screaming, the moment steel met flesh and faith met doubt? Probably not. It is farmland now, quiet and peaceful. Yet something lingers here. A memory, a ghost, or perhaps just the weight of history. This is where 500 bleeding men looked at 20,000 warriors and chose to charge anyway. Where mathematics said die and desperation said fight. Where logic called it impossible and reality simply said watch. And so they charged through the arrows, through warriors, and against overwhelming odds. They reached the hill, killed the general, took the banner, and in doing so, they broke an army and cracked an empire. In just 20 minutes, on an obscure plain, with only 20 horses and one desperate plain, they changed history with a courage so absolute it looked like madness. Perhaps it was madness. Or maybe that is simply what courage is, madness that succeeds, insanity that works. It is the moment when you are so desperate and broken that you do the impossible, not because you think you will win, but because you cannot bear to lose without trying, without fighting, without making the charge. That is the true legacy of Otumba. It isn't about tactics, technology, or even victory. It is about the moment 500 men decided that dying in a charge was better than dying in a square. It was when movement beat stillness, action beat acceptance, and the impossible became history. Remember that the next time you face overwhelming odds, when logic says to quit and mathematics says you have lost. Remember Otumba. Remember the 500 wounded men, the 20 horses, and the charge that shouldn't have worked but did. Remember that sometimes, just sometimes, the desperate gamble pays off, the empire breaks, and the few defeat the many. It happened not through magic but through will, through courage, and through a refusal to accept the odds. Through charging anyway, Santiago.